Welcome back to Phillips Hot Rod Garage. Guys, I tell you what, this old 37 pickup is screaming for attention. This thing's got a Y block in it with 3 deuces, got a 5-speed transmission in it, got a dropped axle. The thing's channeled. It's had a ton of work done to it. Promise you guys, we're gonna work on this thing soon. But this week we're still on the Model A, so let me get you over there and show you what we gotta do. All right guys, so this is where we left off in the last video. We got this thing fitting pretty good, but there's still a little bit of work that's gotta be done to it. We gotta come in here and weld this. Gotta get it back off and weld that seam right there. Also gotta weld up this back corner back here. There's a seam up in there, it's gotta be welded. Then I gotta get these other 2 bolts put in right here. And that's all we lack on this cowl side for a while anyway, until we get it up on the frame. So we're gonna do that. I've also got some new door strikers, some new hardware for those that go right here. I'm gonna get those installed. And then I've got some new dovetails. They go right here. New hardware for those. So I gotta get the striker and the dovetails back in so that I can get those doors hung back on. That's gotta be done. And I also got these B-pillars that still have to be repaired. Gotta do some welding on those, some patchwork on those. And then we got the rear section of the car here. Gotta do a little work on it, get it stuck back on there so it'll all be in one piece. And then once all that's back together, we'll get it stuck back up on here. Get back to fabricating on the chassis. So that kind of gives you an idea of where I'm headed, what I got on my mind, what I want to get done. So I might as well get started, see how much of this I can get knocked out this week. All right, so before I pull the cowl side off, the first thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and fix this issue right here. You can see right there, the distance between the firewall and the cowl side. And then look at the bottom down here. Look at the distance between the firewall and the cowl side here. Big difference. The firewall's got to go in quite a bit right here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this monkey on a stick right here. I'm gonna put it up in there and I'm gonna pull that firewall in. Then I'm gonna drill my hole in the cowl where it's supposed to go. Then I'm gonna pull it off. That's perfect. Let me get a drill. Never mind about drilling it. I can't get to it. So I'm just gonna mark it. Drill it when I get it off. All right, so I got my hole here where I can clearly see it, got it marked, but there's one that's got to go in the middle. I couldn't get to it because the sub rail extension was in the way, couldn't mark it. So I'm just gonna take the old cowl side, stick it up here and line it up with a new one, just to get my center hole marked in place. I think this will work. There's that hole lined up. Line this one up with my mark. I think I'll put some clamps on it. That's pretty good. Let me make sure my pencil will reach. Hopefully it will. Yep, I think I got it. All right, so I got a hammer and dolly this area right here just a little bit, close that crack up some, so I can TIG weld that up. And I got to TIG weld this crack right here, weld that corner, weld this corner, and it'll be ready to go back on. All right, I think that's pretty close there. All right, so I got all the welding done, got all the grinding work done, got that corner done, looks good. And this corner here, got it. Now it doesn't weld too good on this material. You can see the white stuff in the weld. It's that galvanized coating or whatever that is burning off, so didn't TIG weld up too good. It wasn't clean, but turned out good. So now what I got to do is I got to cut this panel off. It's too long here, same way I did the other side. So I'm gonna make some measurements, get a mark along there. Already started putting a mark on it, I think about where it's gonna be. So I got to finish marking that and get that cut off. Then I'll be ready to bolt it back on. All right, guys, that's it. As far as I can go on this panel. The next time I have to take this panel off will be after I put the body back on the frame, and I have to modify the bottom of it to fit the 32 frame rails. So it's gonna go back on now, and this will be the last time it has to go on for a while. Won't have to take it off anymore until I get the car back on the frame. All right, that's it. The driver's side cowl panel fits great. Everything's finished on that. The whole entire cowl assembly is done. So now I need to talk to you guys about the plan on this car. Let me talk to you about a couple things and then we're gonna get back to work. All right, so I've been making YouTube videos since January of this year, and I've made a lot of progress, and it may seem like it has taken longer than it should just to get the cowl done and the sub rails done and the A-pillars done. But you know, I work in a body shop. I do collision repair for a living. I work hard on my job. Then I have a family. I have a lot of other things going on in life. So, you know, to be able to focus on this with every free minute I have is just about impossible. But every free minute that I have that I've been able to use on this car, I have spent it on this car trying to get this cowl section done. Now, I knew from the very beginning that I was going to have to get this cowl done before I could really get very far on this project because of trying to get the cowl to fit the 32 frame. If I was just putting this thing back on a Model A frame, I could have just worked on this cowl along with some other things. But it's very important that I get this cowl done so I can establish the width of those frame rails. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So here are my frame rails. These are JW Garage frame rails. 32 Ford reproduction rails. Now, this measurement right across here is what's important to me. This measurement right here. Now, I had to establish the width of the cowl so that I could get that width on those frame rails correct, because I want the frame rails to line up perfectly with the cowl. And I'll show you what I'm talking about there. The distance right across here has to be exactly the same as the width of those frame rails. And I know I've talked about this in some previous videos, but for you guys that haven't followed the channel very long, when that frame comes right through here and it's sticking down below the car, I want it to be completely flush right through here with the side of that cowl. So that's why it was so important to get the width of the cowl established, the cowl solid, so I could take some measurements before I established the width of the frame. So now that the cowl's done, I can get the doors and the quarters put back on, get the body squared back up, I can get it back on these frame rails, and I can go ahead and establish my dimensions of the frame rails. I can do my pinching that I'm going to do in this area so that the frame lines up with the cowl panels. And I can try to get some final measurements and everything of the frame and start planning out my suspension. And the reason I wanted to do that is so I can kind of move back and forth between the body and the frame and keep it from being just all about one thing for so long. That cowl had to get done before I can do any of this, so I had to stick with it. But now I'm really excited that that's done and I can start moving on to some other stuff. Now, I hate to put those quarters back on there, and I'll show you why, but it's got to be done. I don't really want to put this rusty stuff back up on this really good looking front section, but I just don't have a choice. I don't know what I've got to do right here. I don't know how much of this has got to be fixed. I don't know how much of it's going to be cut off because I don't know where the rear section of the sub rails is going to fit. I've got some curved sub rails from Steadfast Manufacturing that fit the shape of the 32 frame perfectly. Now, I don't know where I've got to cut these off right here. And I don't know where I've got to cut these off until I get all of this put back on here. So why is it so important to put the quarter panels back on? Well, let me show you that. The way I've decided to build this chassis is I'm using the center line of the rear axle, which is going to be right in here. I'm using that axle center line as my reference point to know where my body has to be located. So I can't come up here and just choose a spot just anywhere up in here for my cowl to sit. Just pick a spot that looks good. It's not going to work that way. I got to put the quarters back on the body and set everything back on the frame because I've got to go from here to here and get a center measurement right in here. And that center line has to line up with the axle center line right here in this notch. So I think I got a pretty simple plan, but I think it's a solid plan. Just use the rear wheel well openings the center of those and the center line of the axle, line the body up there, and then just let the front section, just the cowl land wherever it lands. I think the only way to do this really is to do it the way I'm going to do it, because if I line the center line of the rear axle with the center of the quarter panel wheel well opening, if I do that, then my tires on the back are going to perfectly fit the quarters. And I think that's the only way the car is really going to look good. If you back off and look at a car at a distance and those rear tires don't fit the quarter panels very well, then, you know, if you're off-centered some, then the car just looks like garbage. So I'm going to try to get the quarter panels lined perfectly with the center line of the rear axle. And that's why I got to have the quarter panels on the body and it all in one assembly before I put it on here. Now this would be a whole lot easier if I was not working on such a rust bucket and the thing just wasn't literally rusted in half down in the sub rails and just everything just falling apart and collapsing in on itself. It'd be easier, but it is what it is. I'm building what I'm building, so I have no choice but to put the thing together and take it back apart until I get it done. And I'm at that point right now to where I can't go any further on the chassis without putting those quarters and doors back on. So I'm gonna put the old rusty quarters, rusty doors back on this nice looking cowl section and go ahead and put it back on this frame. So that's the plan. That's the direction I'm headed. I think that'll work out good for me. So what I gotta do is I gotta get this front body section back off these jack stands, get it on the floor. That'll make it a little easier for me to get the rear section attached to the body. I can't just pick it up and put it on where it's at because I got to do this by myself. I don't have any hot rod buddies that just like to hang out in the shop and work on hot rods. I pretty much do this by myself. And if you ever see anybody in my videos helping me, I'm having to pay them. So that's just how it works out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this down so I can get started putting this rear section on. All right, we're close with it. Let's get it hooked over the B pillars. There we go, that side. All right, now let's see if we can get this side on. Gotta have some tools to work with. Well, we're getting close. There's the problem. That got it. All right, so now that I got the rear section on, I got to clean the hardware that holds these two brackets on. I got to soak it in Evaporust. Soaked it for a couple of days. It looked pretty clean, so I'm gonna go ahead and wash these with water, get them cleaned up good, see if we can get these brackets put back on. All right, so I got the bolts clean and Evaporust. It's time to stick these brackets on. Got some new washers and some new nuts, but I'm reusing the old bolts. I think these bolts will come in a wood kit, or the bolt kit for bolting the new wood in. But currently I don't have that bolt kit. I do have the wood pieces that go here, but I don't have the bolt kit, so I'm just reusing these old ones. Most likely, upon final assembly, I'll probably be replacing these. We'll just see how that goes. Right, so I can't really tighten these real tight because I don't have the wood in here and I don't want to crush down the B-pillar. I just want them tight enough just to hold the brackets so I can line the quarter panel up, get some bolts in it. So I gotta grab a screwdriver and see if I can get that tight. Okay, one. Two. The last one now. I can put the bracket on the other side. All right, I think that's it. That'll work. So now I'll be able to put a bolt through this hole right here. Well, there's actually two holes on each side that I'll be able to put bolts in to help hold this thing squared up. All right, let me get the one put on the other side. One bolt on. Bolt number two. Finally got it in there. Finally. Maybe I should have put these on before I put the quarters on. Might have made it a little bit easier. But that's all right. I got it on there. Now for the last one. Got it. Let me put the nut on and tighten these up real quick. Let's tighten them up. Not too much. We don't want to collapse the B-pillar. All right. Last one. All right, so that's got it for those. Those brackets are back in. Passenger side. All right, guys, I'm feeling good about it. The quarters are back on. The cowl's completely done. I got the brackets in here that hold the quarters back to the B-pillars. It's been a lot of work. It's been a long week, but I'm feeling very accomplished. I'm happy with where I'm at on this thing. So in the next video, I'm going to put the strikers in. I'm going to put the dovetails in. And I've got some new oversized door pins. I know I got a lot of wear in my hinges, so I got to figure out what to do on that. I don't know what size I got to drill the hinges out to accommodate these oversized pins. So I'm gonna figure that out this week. I'm gonna get that done. And in the next video, we're gonna hang the doors. We're gonna get the quarters to fit perfectly. We're gonna get the square tubing in here, tacked back in place to hold the car square. And we're gonna try to get the car on the chassis in the next video. We're gonna get it back on the chassis so that we can start fitting the bottoms of the cowls to the frame rails. And we're going to start working on the rear sub rails pretty soon. So tune in next week. You're not going to want to miss it. Guys, I appreciate you watching. That's where I'm going to leave you. I'll see you in the next one.